On July 13 of the year 1793, the French citizen Jean-Paul Marat was stabbed to death in his bathtub by a young aristocratic woman. The same year, the leading neoclassical painter Jacques-Louis David decided to create this painting to commemorate Marat. After his death, David was already asked to organize a grand funeral for his friend and political ally, Marat, and later he decided to make this political tribute, which has become a symbol of his martyrdom and a powerful piece of political propaganda. It may look like an odd scene, someone stabbed in the bathtub, but Marat suffered from a skin disease and he liked to sit in the bath to relieve his skin trouble while working on his writings. Jean-Paul Marat was 50 years old at the time of his assassination. He was a physician, scientist, but most importantly, a politician and influential journalist. He had strong and well-developed political ideas, had been frequently in trouble for writing about them, and he did believe that terror was a legitimized revolutionary weapon. The political situation in France at that time was complicated, 4 years after the French Revolution. Marat wrote passionately in favor of the so-called sans-culottes, the common people from the French lower classes. Before the French Revolution, when France was still a monarchy, the lower class was treated badly and their quality of life was very poor. After the French Revolution, the sans-culottes supported the new regime and became fierce proponents of change. They were basically the opposite of the aristocracy. Marat published in all sorts of sources since the French Revolution of 1789, and most noticeably so in his own newspaper called L'Ami du Peuple, which can be translated as the friend of the people. There he defended the rights of the poor, who in exchange adored him. On the other hand, the royalists hated him as he was fiercely opposed to them. But in addition, the more moderate supporters of the revolution also strongly disliked Marat, and as we will hear soon, the person who murdered him supported one of these more moderate groups. When the French novelist Nicolas Restif de la Bretonne walked through the streets of Paris on July 13, 1793, he allegedly heard a shopkeeper talk to his neighbor saying, "She was about to flee. She was stopped at the door. He is dead," referring to a young woman from the city of Caen named Charlotte Corday, who had just stabbed Marat to death. The news of the assassination quickly spread through the city of Paris. The murderer of Marat was a girl from the provinces who sympathized with the Girondins, a more moderate faction of the French revolutionaries who did not agree with the more extreme faction known as the Jacobins, with whom Marat sympathized. I will not bore you with all the details of the complicated French political landscape at that time, but it suffices to know that some people, including Charlotte Corday, held Marat responsible for the September massacres, which had taken place less than a year before in 1792. Marat had indeed actively called for some of these cruel killings, although he was not the only one responsible for these. The way that Corday entered the house of Marat was a curious one. On the morning of July 13, she came to his flat but was refused. Later that day in the evening, she tried again, claiming to have some important information about Girondins who had escaped in Normandy. The wife of Marat actually didn't want to let her in again, but Marat himself asked her to come to his bathtub office to hear what she had to say. They talked for some 15 minutes with each other, after which Corday suddenly attacked him with a large kitchen knife she had brought along in her corset. She stabbed him in the chest, and Marat would die within seconds, but not before crying out to his wife, "Help me, my beloved!" It would be too late. Corday was arrested very quickly after her act and was found guilty. 4 days later, she was killed by the guillotine. You can see her here just before her execution, as painted by Arturo Michelena in 1889, and according to eyewitness reports, she remained calm until the end, putting her own head under the blade, dying in a dignified way. And just for completeness, Corday was quite a revolutionary herself, putting her country in front of her personal happiness. And just like Marat, she became a champion of the people who supported her case, though this has changed over time due to the influential painting that David made of Marat. So before painting this, David was tasked with a grand funeral for Marat, which was turned into a big propaganda event. The way it was organized shows quite some similarities to the painting. Before the funeral, people could say their goodbyes to Marat, who was put in a former church with his body naked from the waist up, so that people could see the fatal stab wound. Next to the body, the bathtub was placed, together with a wooden crate we see in the painting. This crate served as his writing table, and on top were his inkpot and quill, presented as some kind of relics. The whole funeral turned Marat into a saint of the revolution. David was the perfect person to paint Marat. Not only were they good friends, was David one of the leading French painters of that day. He had also visited Marat earlier that evening, just moments before his assassination. And so he remembered the setting in which Marat was killed, as just moments earlier he had talked to Marat when he was in his bath. He remembered the ink and paper on the wooden crate next to the bath, just as we see in the painting. He actually had all these items brought to his studio when painting this work, including a death mask of Marat to paint his likeness. As David remembered it, the hand of Marat was reaching out from the bath to the table to write his last thoughts for the welfare of the people. At this last moment, Marat was already pretty sick, perhaps mortally ill, as he suffered from constant fever and severe skin rashes. Basically, he was a human wreck. Yet David captured Marat with a gentle face, not a face of a sick and controversial revolutionary with extreme ideas. It was his way of portraying him as a hero with many virtues. David captures him moments after his death, his head lolling to the side, facing the viewer, and his limp arm hanging down. It's a pose that reminds me of paintings of Jesus when his body is taken off the cross. Around his head, Marat has wound cloths soaked in vinegar to give him some relief, but he does not show any of his skin disease. He placed Marat in an imaginary space with a bloody knife lying next to the tub. He chose a large dark background, taking up half of the painting, as a sort of eternal space separating Marat from his real bathroom. In front of the inkpot on the table, we can see a banknote and a letter which states, "Give this banknote to the mother of 5 whose husband died defending the fatherland." These two elements were an invention of David, as they were not listed in a detailed inventory that was read out during the trial of the assassin. It was rather a way for David to emphasize and portray Marat as a friend of the common people. Finally, Marat is holding a letter which states, 13 July 1793, Marie-Anne Charlotte Corday to the citizen Marat. It is enough that I feel unhappy for me to have a right to your goodness. In reality, Marat never received this letter from her, but after Corday's arrest, a similar letter was found in her possession. Well, I hope you enjoyed the discussion of the Death of Marat by Jacques-Louis David. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment down below with your thoughts. Thanks for watching.